Hello, my friends. It's time for visualizing the PMBOK guide. And in our last episode, we talked about risk management. Today, we are going to be talking about a topic that I find extremely interesting. It is in the area of schedule management, and we're talking first about define activities. Define activities is the second process in scheduling, and we're going to talk about this first. Now, why do I want to talk about this first? Because this is a melting pot of many, many different things. But I first of all want to address what exactly happens in the very beginning of define activities. In define activities, you are using a very important output of the previous knowledge area, known as the scope baseline. The scope baseline is a very important input to define activities, majorly because it contains something known as the WBS, the work breakdown structure. The scope baseline contains three things: the WBS, the WBS dictionary, and the project scope statement. And as a result of these three very important things, we keep the scope baseline in our focus. Now, I know in the PMBOK guide, you do not see the scope baseline mentioned explicitly, except you actually go to 6.2. If you don't go to 6.2 and you stay on the outskirts of figure 6-1, then you're going to see project management plan. And you won't really understand why this scope baseline is a critical input to this. So as usual, you know what we do. We ask the question, what am I doing? What am I using? What am I getting? Where is it going and why? So right off the bat, you want to ask this question about the scope baseline. Why is it here? And then that makes you backtrack to realize, oh, it's your project management plan that is actually listed as an input to define activities on a high level. But if you get into the details, for example, if you go to page 183 in the PMBOK guide, you are then going to realize the WBS dictionary, project scope statement, these three things, the scope baseline is a sub input. So your sub input to define activities is actually one of the most critical inputs. Why? Because your WBS, as you might remember, contains those work packages. And guess what you're doing with those work packages in this process? In this process, those work packages are going to be broken down into the activities. So without your scope baseline, what are you breaking down really? Nothing. So the activities are broken down here from your WBS, which happens in the previous knowledge area. So there's a reason why your scope baseline is there. Your scope baseline is there because you need to break down those work packages. And your scope baseline is part of the project management plan. Okay? So with that said, let us visualize what exactly I'm talking about in a little bit more detail. So your scope baseline is the input, but you don't want to lose sight of the WBS, the WBS dictionary, and project scope statement. Now, let's see what exactly we have as co-inputs to this process. at the very highest level, we mustn't forget that our project management plan is actually larger in presence in this process. So we're going to reflect that in showing that the project management plan is actually, of course, bigger than your scope baseline. So that is the monster input, but your scope baseline, remember, is part of your project management plan. So we'll make it just a little bit smaller now that you understand what exactly is going on here. So what am I doing? I am defining what needs to be done. What does that look like? What does an activity list look like? To visualize it, let's go to a dummy project that a colleague of mine put together, and let's take a look at an activity list from there. So here we go. Your activity list looks something like this. A list of the activities and a description of what is being done. Enough for people to understand what is being done. Now, this is from the fictitious backpack project, and that is exactly what we're trying to achieve here, those tasks. In the world of the PMI, we call activities tasks. Tasks, activities, we use all of that interchangeably. So, in define activities, again, we are defining all of those bits and pieces that have to be done. The tiny little things that need to be done, we are defining them. This is different from your work package. Keep that in mind. The work package contains activities. So activities are smaller amounts of work. Okay? Now, as we address that, the project management plan contains a scope baseline. You also want to think about something else that it contains. Because remember, this is the second process of schedule management. So going into this, we also have the schedule management plan. The schedule management plan is an input through being included in the project management plan. So again, we are going to put another plan here. We're going to shrink it so that you remember, oh, it's part of this. It's not that big, but it is part of this. Okay, so you want to think about it just like that. And whenever you see project management plan, it is important to ask the question, why is my project management plan being mentioned here? Is there something that I haven't really caught on to as far as why it's here? Yeah, I know it's the big old plan, but why is it here? And that's why I ask people to check out those sub-bullets. All of those sub-bullets, they are really going to help you as you study. If you really want to know the detail, you got to look into those sub-bullets. Okay? So the schedule management plan, scope baseline, those are referenced in your PMBOK guide. So now you understand why you have your scope baseline, your schedule management plan guides how you carry out defined activities, and now we are going to proceed to show the two sidekicks, EEF and OPAs. They are just about everywhere, just about everywhere. Enterprise environmental factors, the acronym I have for this is my senator legalized. Now I got to change the words because the Google boys don't like me mentioning what the senators actually legalized, but they legalized cranberry and granola for patients. You don't want to know what cranberry and granola really mean. You don't want to know what those are. That is code for something that is totally outlawed here on this platform. More on that later in a different video. Okay, so we've got EEFs and OPAs going in. That accounts for the inputs. The tools and techniques, we've talked about how I roll with the tools and techniques, and in the last episode, I talked about everyday meetings, EDM. Well, here we have a different type of EDM with an R. We have EDRM. We've got expert judgment first, but the D this time is actually for decomposition. So we have, of course, the lady with the glasses, the expert judge, who is so smart. There she is. And then next we have decomposition. So when we decompose, what are we doing? You could think of it like this: breaking something down with a hammer, decomposing the task. You can use that for decomposition. So we're going to use the hammer to break down the work. And we've got rolling wave planning. So planning in waves, rolling waves. So I have an icon to remind you of the waves of the sea. Rolling wave planning. Remember, the aim of these videos, my friends, is to get you to internalize a lot of this content so that you're not just working on cramming, it's actually sinking in. Get it? So when we talk about rolling wave planning, what exactly is it visually? Rolling wave planning visually has to do with your WBS again, and we've talked about this WBS stuff quite a bit today, but assume this is your WBS. Your WBS spans across, let's say, 10 years. This is 2015 for this component right here. And that means everything under that component, I'm really saying, takes place in 2015, right? The next component right here, so let's say this is A, this is A1, this is A2. A2 takes place in 2020, where we are today. So what do? We plan all the way down to this level, the work package level. But we've got work happening in 2030. This work right here, we know the dollar amounts, right? We've identified, oh, well, if we do that work, this is how much money it's going to set us back by. This is how much we are likely to spend. But because the work you're doing in 2030 is going to be affected by these pieces, you're going to wait until you get closer to 2030, and then you're going to break this open into work packages, and then you break them open into tasks or activities. So you plan in waves. Get it? You plan in waves. So rolling wave planning is all about planning work that's happening in the future out at a high level. So this is at a high level. This is in detail. You've already done all of this. Back in 2015, you went down to the lower levels. You planned all this stuff out. But this, you did not, okay? So I hope that clears up some of the confusion about rolling wave planning, because if we don't have a visual, it becomes a little bit hard for you to understand what exactly the PMI mean. So when you see rolling wave planning over here, it makes sense what exactly they're talking about. So rolling wave planning is used, like I said, in this instance, to plan work in waves, as it were. All right? So next we have meetings. And you do remember from our last episode, the poor people around the table, death by meeting, hopefully not. Hopefully this is life by meeting, but there they are. And you do know that in these episodes, we typically use our red square and we use our arrow going in to show the influence that the tools and techniques have on that. Okay? Good. So when we talk about decomposition, breaking down the work, when we talk about rolling wave planning, staggering the work, when we talk about expert judgment, we're talking about expert judgment regarding those things that are being done on the project. Similar past projects, someone has experience, they could be that expert judgment resource. Okay? Now, we have, coming out of this process, some rather interesting outputs. So the outputs that we get from here, we're going to take a look at these. They are 3, and those of you who are in the class on Saturdays and Wednesdays, you better know what these are, or I might have to ask you for a fine, ground rules. I might have to ask you for that fine. All right, I'm kidding. So here we go. These are the outputs of this rather important process. The first output that you get from this process is the AL. As I said in the beginning, the activity list. I actually showed you an example of it. And that's what you are getting. That's what you're getting out, the activity list. Okay, that is the very first one. The next thing that you're getting is known as activity attributes. One of my students out of NASA came up with a really great description of what this is. I said, Norm, what do you have to tell me about this? He said, Phil, this is just metadata, activity metadata. Well, it's no surprise he's a PMP guru now. It's now PMP, and that's what he gave me, activity metadata. This stuff in here, in your activity attributes, it is just metadata, activity metadata. I'm going to show you an example of that activity metadata. So let's go over to our fictitious project once again. And let's go over to activity attributes. And here in the activity attributes, you can see we have activity ID, activity name, how that links to the WBS ID, what branch does it link to. And then we have all of this detail about what could be part of your activity attributes: responsibility, resource requirement, predecessors, successors, activity type, location, assumption, constraint. And then we have a little description here, and we have so much stuff that further expands on what exactly the activity is all about. And that is really what activity attributes are. They are indeed metadata. They expand on your understanding of that particular activity. Okay, so that is your definition. It is, again, just that metadata. Last but not least, something else we get out of this process is known as the milestone list. The milestone list is a list of milestones. If you've ever used SAP, Primavera, MS Project, and the like, then you've definitely seen milestones, and they're zero duration events. A milestone is not a task, it is a zero duration event. So as usual, we're going back to our example, and I am going to show you an example of a milestone list, a list of milestones. Here's our milestone list, and you can see we have the milestone name, we have a description of what the milestone is, and then we have the date. So a milestone is a date, it's a day, right? A particular date, a particular day that signifies the accomplishment of something or an event, okay? It's very important that you think of a milestone as a zero duration event. It has no duration. A milestone on the exam, you do need to know that it's not that diamond in MS Project. I know in some instances, you're made to think it's a diamond shape. No, it's not. It's not a diamond shape. The traditional shape for a milestone is a triangle. Not that, a triangle. That is your milestone. Okay, that's how they typically show milestones. Okay, the traditional shape is a triangle. All right, so let us go a little bit further into some of these outputs. I want to talk about them just a little bit more. So let's open up our PMBOK guides just really quickly to the output that you get from here. Activity list on page 185, it says the activity list includes the scheduled activities required on the project. For projects that use rolling wave planning or agile techniques, the activity list will be updated periodically as the project progresses. The activity list includes an activity identifier and a scope of work description for each activity in sufficient detail to ensure that the project team members understand what work is required to be completed. I also want to focus a little bit on the tools and techniques just briefly. So let's talk about this one, the rolling wave planning. Rolling wave planning. Rolling wave planning is an iterative planning technique in which the work to be accomplished in the near term, so remember my little example for you over here, work to be accomplished in the near term, 2015 and 2020, that work is planned in detail, while work further in the future, 2030, is planned at a higher level. It is a form of progressive elaboration applicable to work packages, planning packages, and release planning when using an agile or waterfall approach. So that is important to remember. In the world of agile, you know that things work very differently. The way we plan, the way we go about our business is very different. The way we first of all put together that backlog, product backlog, and then the product backlog of all the user stories, all the things that the users want written in the form of a user story, that is your product backlog. But the product backlog is usually so significant that we're going to have to break it down into bits. So we break it down into sprints. So let's say in this sprint, you're working on these user stories. These user stories are worked on by the team. And we do know that every 24 hours, you're going to have that daily stand-up meeting where you report about what you're doing. So we have the daily stand-up meeting. And in the daily stand-up, you answer the 3 questions. What did you do yesterday? What are you doing today? And what impediments are in your way? How can I help you? When all that is said and done, the repeat, the sprints are 2 or 4, I should say. Some teams might do it in a shorter period, but it's really 4 to 6 in many instances, weeks. But it could be any duration. It really depends on the team. But ultimately, you're going to get this shippable product increment. And at the end of the day, the way you stagger the planning, what gets into the sprint backlog is determined by the team and the product owner, you see. So the product owner comes up with a product backlog, but the prioritization of the backlog and the sprint backlog being extracted from the product backlog is a team thing. It's very important to note that the world of Agile is different from the world we're talking about here in terms of how it is executed. We still care about the components of schedule, time. Remember, your sprints in the world of Agile, they are in a time box, okay? So they are time boxed. And that is something else to keep in mind, and that is what the PMI are trying to tell you here. All right, so going back to our definitions here, the last one I want to talk about is the hammer decomposition right here. Decomposition, it says, is a technique used for dividing and subdividing the project scope and project deliverables into smaller, more manageable parts. Activities represent the effort needed to complete a work package. The defined activities process defines the final outputs as activities rather than deliverables, as done in the Create WBS process. The activity list, WBS, and WBS dictionary can be developed either sequentially or concurrently, and the WBS and WBS dictionary use as the basis for development of the final activity list. Each work package within the WBS is decomposed into the activities. So that is what I was showing you right over here. We're going to decompose these work packages, okay? Let's make it very clear what you are doing. I'll circle this in black. What you're doing over here is you are decomposing. You are decomposing these work packages into activities. Now, not to take you into scope management, but it is important that for your WBS, you know what is the root or the root node, you know what is a potential control account, you know what is a potential planning package, right? And you know what is at the lowest level a work package. So in economies of hierarchy, work package under planning package level under control account level under root node level. And that, my friend, has brought us to the end of another episode of Visualizing the PMBOK Guide. Make sure you read all the details and the adjoining tasks. And the next thing I want you to think about is this. These three in the bubble, where do they go? You really want to know where they go? This could take some time to discuss, but I'll tell you. The activity list, activity attributes, milestone list, they go to the next process. That's right, they go to sequence activities. But that is for another episode. Thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you very soon. Remember, if you are studying for your PMP exam, you don't know where to go, you don't know what to do, you don't know who can help you. Well, what you need to do is head on down to the website, www.praizion.com. And if you feel, I don't want to attend a live class, you can attend an on-demand class. There's so many on-demand classes. PMP Exam Prep Camp, that's on demand. But if you're like, Phil, no, I want to have a conversation. I want to talk to you. I want to understand how you know what you know and all the details. Then you need to go to pmsucceed.com. And in pmsucceed.com, we'll help you succeed. Like we've got going on right now, training for the pilot exam. And that training, if I were you, it's not too late to join. You want to join because I'm telling you, the people who have signed up for this, they are getting massive value and they're going to continue to get value into March. Don't be left behind on this deal. Hey, it's only $350 and I'm giving you 24 hours. 24 hours. And to be quite honest, this deal is a ridiculous steal. It's a stinking steal because it's not going to be available. Like as the exam begins to unfold for the new exam, this deal is going away. So now is the time to do it because that price, I can tell you, it won't be around for too long. So you want to make sure you sign up. I know how to convince you. Sign up now. Do it. Now, those of you who say, well, Phil, I'm scared of the pilot. I don't want all that information. I'd rather just stay on the outskirts in some, course that is relegated to just knowledge areas and not all this new pilot stuff. Then go to pmanonymous.com. pmanonymous.com will help you sign up for the Wednesday training. We are only doing knowledge areas. We're not doing all that spooky pilot stuff. And if you don't want to be on that, then that's fine. So please sign up for your own good. A lot of people are asking, Phil, what do I do? How do I get good? You got to immerse yourself. Immerse yourself, okay? So I'm showing up, trying to immerse you in this stuff, but you got to take the extra step, okay? You got to sync up. You got to come to these programs. You got to take advantage of this. Like I keep telling people, one day I'm going to be folding this show up and be training very minimally. So now's the time to get on board. You know, some people say, Phil, I wish I was in your classes. I missed them. I didn't know. Well, now you know. I look forward to seeing you. Take care and all the very best. Bye for now.